to talk this week a little bit about the intermediate learning process. In this video, I'm going to share 3 things you need to do after you've passed that beginner phase of just following tutorials. And spoiler, the answer is to develop your own process for learning. And this is something that I ran into all the time when I worked as a curriculum designer at Unity. Specifically, I was a senior instructional designer there, and part of my job was coming up with learning content, paid learning content for game studios, industrial firms, places that were looking to hire a trainer to come out and kind of teach them the next steps with Unity, right? I've learned all the basics, and now I want to kind of bring my knowledge up to that intermediate and advanced level. And what the big problem that we always noticed with this is that it's very easy to make a generalized beginner curriculum, right? You show all the features of the engine, you kind of show them one by one, you kind of explain their use cases and give an introduction to them. But then when you start to move into intermediate and advanced territory, there's one big problem. The focus then has to be on the specific and kind of niche interests of the project that the learner is working on. So, for example, I mentioned game studios and industrial firms, right? Those different kinds of projects have different needs, different target hardware, different team structures that are even making them, so that completely changes the way that you're going to structure your code and develop your project. Not to mention, from a curriculum development standpoint, it's kind of difficult to make a course that solves both of those people's needs, and that was kind of like the central struggle that I dealt with there. You know, you'd end up making a hyper-specific curriculum that wasn't useful to a broad number of learners. And while that's really awesome for the people that get that hyper-specific learning, I think I have some better ideas about how to approach this intermediate to advanced level stage of learning. So here are those 3 things that I recommend doing to move past this beginner stage and right into that intermediate and advanced level of developing your own process for learning and creating. The first is to take action by doing. So work on a project, take on a big project and start doing it. Run into those problems yourself, and then that's how you learn. Myself as a game developer, you go through that first Unity tutorial, you learn the basics, and then what I recommend to people is start making a project. Keep the scope small, don't make the next big MMO or anything, but start working on a project and learning by doing. And the second thing is you're going to run into problems in that project. You're going to run into things that you don't need to do. That's when you need to take on that self-directed learning approach, either looking up in the documentation how to kind of fix that thing. You can look at what other people have run into with that problem. Just do some Googling, learn how to Google your problems. That's how you'll learn in this next stage. No course is going to tell you how to make the project that you want to make because it's unique and individual to you, which means that the approach you take to learning needs to be unique and individual as well. And the third thing that you should do that's kind of just an ongoing process is talk with, listen to, and expose yourself to tons of information from experts, and then retain what's useful to your process. So don't just copy exactly what other people are doing. Just listen, just information gather. Listen to podcasts, watch industry talks. For me, as a game developer, I like watching the GDC talks and just kind of putting them on while I'm doing dishes. It's really helpful for just absorbing all of this information. I don't even know sometimes where it comes from, especially a lot of this production methodology that I've adapted for myself. I feel like I've pulled from so many little talks and podcast interviews that have had little nuggets of information that I'm like, oh, that is useful to my process. Oh, I should playtest more, And recently I actually noticed a few examples of this. I saw a design write-up from one of the designers of Into the Breach's AI, and I really liked this one sentence here. I also tend to prefer extremely simple, bordering on dumb solutions for nearly everything if possible. It's easier to implement, maintain, edit, extend, etc. There are definitely more complex options for the AI in Into the Breach, even options that may have made a better game. But as the sole programmer on the team, good enough is generally what I'm aiming for. And this is exactly what I'm talking about. When you're working on a project and you're the only programmer, your needs and concerns are way different from someone who's working on a team with 10 programmers. So, if you were to take a course that's aimed at that 10 programmers, you're not going to learn information that's really viable for your situation as the sole programmer, right? You'll learn some good stuff, but really the practice of being a solo programmer is that, you're aiming for that good enough. You're aiming for something that's easy to implement, maintain, edit, extend, etc. You don't need to really focus on quality of code or readability or stuff. As long as you can read it and maintain it and fit your needs and release your game, that's what matters. And I notice this sort of thing coming up in my process all the time. Since I mostly work solo with occasional collaborators, I just focus on efforts that are going to lead me towards releasing my game. You know, sometimes when I'm streaming, someone will come on and tell me, oh, you shouldn't use that programming pattern, or you should use a different access modifier for that variable. And I have no tolerance for it. You know, if it's gonna waste time for me like thinking about the right way to structure my project, that's another 30 minutes that I don't spend pushing my project towards the goal line of actually being done. And right now I'm working on Forklift Flower Pot, mostly full time, trying to push it towards an alpha state. So right now I'm just, you know, on the ground trying to put content and levels into the game and stuff and kind of refine it along the way. But I'm not focused on what's the best way to do this. You know, I'm focusing on extremely simple solutions that are easy to implement, maintain, edit, extend. Anyways, so that's kind of what my learning process looks like. You know, I'm still learning all the time, but it's in the context of these projects and these goals that I have, which is what I definitely recommend for anyone that's moving past that beginner towards that intermediate stage. If you made it this far, thanks so much for watching. Wishlist my game Forklift Flower Pot on Steam. It helps me a ton with the Steam algorithm, trying to get past that and get featured in the store when the game does eventually come out. So I appreciate it so much if you take the time to do that. All right, take care and I'll catch you next time.